in the last few weeks, Brett and Jose have been encouraging you all to look into getting your SRES designations. And I wanted to tell you that the board is actually offering a class at a discounted price right now for SRES designation course. You could get that for $236. I think that's a great investment that it'll give you a one-up when if you're working with people 50 and older. They also are offering a class for pricing strategies, and the new price is $104. They're helping you create CMAs, and I know you're all awesome, do a great job, but there might be some new ideas in there for you. Another one that I thought was really good is corporate relocation, the next move. They're offering that class for $92 for a designation called REBAC. It talks about the next move course will have knowledge and skills that can be used to recognize and take advantage of business opportunities. So good morning and welcome. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Hey, Lexi, do you mind starting the first slide, please? So our first question today is you represent the buyer. The seller agreed to give the buyer $3,000 in prepaids, closing costs, etc. After the building inspection, the seller did not want to fix certain items and decided to give your buyer $2,000 in lieu of making repairs. So you're going to need to write an amendment for the credit. How much would you write on that amendment?
$5,000.
You're right. And I want to caution everybody, this is very important. If you overlook that first $3,000 and you write the amendment for $2,000, the title company is going to collect $2,000 because they're looking at amendments. They're not scouring through and looking for mistakes like that. So just be really careful. Anybody have questions about that?
No, but what I do typically is buyer to credit or seller to credit the buyer an additional $2,000 for a total of $5,000.
You could do that too. And of course, another thing you have to be careful about now getting up to $5,000, are there actually, will the lender actually allow that much credit? So before you accept that, you want to make sure that the buyer can actually get $5,000 in credits. Okay.
Yep.
Any questions? No. Okay. Number 2, you represent the seller. You receive an offer. The buyer is requesting to close in 30 days and is asking the seller to finance the property for 90 days. They need to sell their current home, which is out of state. Do you see any red flags?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Is their
a
house on
lot.
the market? If it is it under contract? And what are the terms of financing?
For sure, those are really good. So typically, if you're entertaining an offer from a buyer that wants to make their house contingent on that, we would make sure that their house is either A, on the market, which is okay, but it would be better that if it was under contract and they had an exact closing date. And you know, with this house, of the seller's house being the current buyer's home being out of state, you can go to that program called Remine and look up their house, and you can get all the information. It's like how much they still owe on it and that sort of thing. But in this case, this was a condo that was vacant It's been on the market for quite a while. There were all kinds of flags here. So that buyer did some research. They knew hey, that's vacant. Secondly, they knew there wasn't a current loan on it, so there wouldn't be any issues with their lender. And what if they move in, right? And they quit paying, they don't follow through. Now we have to hire, your seller would have to hire an attorney. And the eviction process could take 6 months, perhaps, to get them out. So one thing, maybe in this case, this actually happened. I suggested, hey, give us $50,000 up front. We can do that. Something of collateral before you would do something like that. But the seller was not interested in entertaining that idea. Any questions? Nope. Okay. So number 3, you represent the buyer. They want to purchase a vacant lot in Brentwood. There are several other homes currently being built on the same street. The seller is requesting the offer be written on a special sale contract. What should you write in the contract to protect your buyer? So there were homes there. They've been torn down. The houses have been removed, and there's several different builders building homes on this street. So you, in this case, you have the buyer. What would you write in the contract to protect your buyer?
I'd probably ask for a vacant lot disclosure.
Yes, absolutely, for sure.
Well, it kind of depends on what your buyer wants to do with that lot.
Well, in this, that's good. In this scenario, they want to build a home. It's one of those, has to be a shotgun house. It's real narrow and long. And it was about $250,000 just for the lot.
Well, maybe a survey.
For sure, yep.
Contingent upon approval by Brentwood that the house could be built.
Absolutely.
Yes. You know what, Mona, that's a great point. And a lot of the municipalities, they're different. I know Kirkwood, they have so many, they want you to be built the back a certain amount. You can only go so high because some of the other homes then get overwhelmed by the height of the home next door.
Right, and like in the city, you're supposed to have a 4,000 square foot lot to build on, and you can get a variance for that, but you have to go through the hoops to verify that you can get that. So it's probably the same in other municipalities as well.
And it's going to make a difference too. Like you look at this happened in Brentwood, and there's so many homes like this where they're actually knocking down homes, building new homes. So you have a little less risk if you know that whole street, you've got 4 or 5 new homes that have been built that have been knockdowns or vacant property, as opposed to being the first one on the block.
Right. And I thought it was interesting because I actually went with the agent on this call. We met with the builder, and he right away said, hey, I'll go over there and meet with you tomorrow. I'm like, great. Well, he gets there and he goes, scratch everything I told you yesterday. There's a sinkhole on the property. Yeah. So I think the vacant land disclosure, yes, getting municipal approval, all of those things are important, but we want to protect the buyer. So make sure that we're making it contingent. We got to have some contingencies in there so they can get out of it if they need to do so. This buyer was very excited. We're sitting there with the builder. It came up to about $1 million to build this house to the specs she wanted. But then when we get over to the vacant land, the brakes went on immediately because she got really concerned because he didn't know what caused the sinkhole. Now, because it was older homes, there could have been a septic tank on there, and all that takes money too, to fill that in and do it properly and do it according to what the municipality requests, or the county even.
Do you guys remember when that sinkhole happened on that golf course? I think it was in Illinois.
Yeah.
Literally, the people were playing golf on it, and the fairway completely collapsed.
I do remember
That was crazy.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. Number 4, you represent the seller. You receive an offer and the seller accepts. The financing contingency deadline is tomorrow. The buyer's agent sends over an amendment to extend the financing contingency deadline. What is their why? Why are they wanting to do that?
They didn't have loan commitment.
What would be an option that you could come back with? Let's say the seller says, well, you know what if we extend this the 10 days and then they want to walk? What could we do to help protect our buyer?
I'd have them to protect the buyer.
Seller.
The
A
seller.
seller, I'm sorry, yes. the
Or
seller.
earnest money, non-refundable.
That's what I was
Yes,
gonna say.
ma'am. That's right, Mona. Anybody else? That's the one I came up with, was to extend with additional non-refundable earnest money.
Because that way you'll know if the buyer really is serious, really is creditworthy, but maybe there's something hanging up, with the lender as far as paperwork or something. If they're not, then they're gonna walk.
Right, you're right, absolutely.
But the other thing is the buyer they don't have to give you a loan commitment letter. There's nothing in the contract that says they have to
Right.
give you a loan commitment letter. But in
Right.
the financing clause, it says that they have to give you a loan denial letter from the lender, or if they can't get them, if the lender won't give them one, then they have to give you an affidavit that says they've done everything that they could to try and get their loan, and it has to be notarized, and it has to be by the loan commitment date.
That's
Right.
right. Okay, so the next slide, in the same scenario, the buyer calls and says the buyer's financing was denied. I'm gonna go ahead and send over the mutual release. What would you say as the agent that represents the seller?
Send me the denial.
Mhm. Yeah, and in this case, they didn't want to do it. Guess why?
They
Because
don't
they
have it.
They didn't have it. Exactly. So again, I know we've talked about it before, but you don't ever tell a buyer, don't worry about it, you'll just lose your earnest money. It's not
That
true.
No.
They can go after punitive damages and things like that. So just be careful. You don't say, oh, well, they'll just lose your earnest money, your $2,000 or $1,000, whatever. That's not true.
Hey, Lynn, can you
Okay.
hear me? Lynn?
Yeah.
Yes. Hi.
Hi,
Hi,
sorry, I
Randy.
just signed in late. So I'll attest that what you're saying is true because I'm in the middle of that myself, suing my own buyer that defaulted on my own property. So
How's that going?
it's going. It's going.
Well, Randy,
Letters
is,
are going out from the attorney this week.
yeah, so what happens, this has been my experience, is you're like Randy, he calls his attorney and his attorney gets on the computer and looks up the buyers and said, yep, they got money, we're going after them. Now, if they look them up and they're not, they don't have money, they'll probably say, you know what, just let it go, let's not spend the money. But his attorney probably looked into it. So Randy had his folks' property for sale, he had a buyer right away. He fixed everything that he asked them to fix, that he was asked to fix, right, Randy?
Yep, exactly.
And then-
they defaulted.
Ooh,
Didn't you also offer them a mutual release, Randy, and they wouldn't sign it?
Yeah, I offered them a mutual release with me keeping the earnest money, and they would not agree to that. So I rescinded the mutual release and told them we'll go to closing.
Mhm.
I went to closing and they didn't show up. So
That's smart. You always go to closing, always attend closing, have your
Yeah.
folks attend and sign the documents. Because
Yeah,
that's something that would be brought up in court for sure.
I'm happy to share if anybody has questions about all that. Feel free to call me.
Yeah. Hey, that's what this is about, discussion. Who has a question for Randy?
Yeah.
I have one. So in this case, and if you don't want to answer, it's okay. What is your attorney charging, or is he going to take a percentage of what you receive?
That's in discussion. At the moment, he's 250 an hour. But the overall fees he's projecting will be substantially less than the potential earnings. So
We can hope.
we can hope. We'll see.
Oh, sometimes people, it's not based on principle too, right?
Yes. I mean, in my case, it's about $15,000, so it's worth the fight for me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Here's the
and the
lesson,
agent,
don't mess with Randy.
I'm including the agent in this too, because a lot of this is her fault, is my opinion. So
Oh yeah, guess what? They'll go after the agent, the company, everybody gets drawn in
Yeah.
at some point. Can't get a resolution. Yep.
Randy, tell them what the agent texted you.
So the agent texted my agent stating that it was her intention to hold me off market as long as she possibly could.
What?
My
Yeah.
God.
Yes.
She actually sent that? Wow, what a
Yep.
dummy.
In a text message. And I'm like, okay, thank you very much. I needed that.
Ooh.
So the
Wow.
lesson.
Because I was
you know,
gonna say, now your market's not as good as when you first contracted. So
Well, yeah,
now-
'cause
right.
interest rates were going up rapidly. We were approaching winter. It totally affected the sale.
now you're right in the middle of all that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, now that you brought that up about the text message, you know, we have to be careful with our words in text messaging and emails. And I know sometimes things get hot and heavy, you get mad, angry, you say things. Before you hit that send button, walk away, count to 10, come back, reread it before you hit the send. Because if something does escalate and it goes to court, all of that will come up. And I promise you, Randy's gonna have that text, and
oh yes.
that's not gonna prove good for that agent.
So
I'm sorry, was she the buyer's agent?
yes.
Gosh.
Yeah. Kind of stupid.
And she
Yeah.
sent that to your agent. Wow. Okay.
Yep.
In writing.
Ooh.
You know, verbally, you can always say, no, you misunderstood what I said. But dang, when you put it in writing like that, that's not gonna go away. Okay, thanks for sharing, Randy. That was great. Good learning experience for all of us. So number 6, we talked about this a little bit and Kathy elaborated earlier, but in this case, you represent the buyer, and this just happened. So I want to go over it again. You represent the buyer. They will refer to you, and the buyer is using an out-of-state lender. The financing contingency deadline is quickly approaching. Our agent was in constant contact with the lender, and the lender kept saying, don't worry about it. These people are solid buyers. They're in good standing. So now we're on the day of the financing contingency deadline date, and we don't have anything from the lender, nothing in writing that says, hey, these people are solid. These people are great. We do not have a loan commitment in writing. So should you be concerned that you don't have on the day of the financing contingency and you don't have a loan commitment? Should you be concerned?
Yes.
I don't like it when I don't get one, but the buyer's agent does not. Oh, wait a minute.
You
I'm
are the
concerned
buyer.
The buyer. Yeah,
You
I'm
are the
concerned.
buyer.
Absolutely.
Yes. So what if the lender this is what the lender told the agent, and the agent was actually here with me, so I heard it. Hey, we're short-staffed and I can't get that to you today. I'll get it to you tomorrow. Well, tomorrow, our buyer's in a cash contract.
Yep.
So what could have happen. What should have happened was you
Extension.
first, yes, you want to make your buyer aware, hey, I don't have it from your lender tomorrow. This is a cash deal. So guess what happens?
You didn't
5
get the
days
money.
after loan contingency deadline, the lender calls and says, hey, we got a problem. And it's a big problem, and we're gonna send a loan denial over now.
Oh,
Too late.
Yeah,
Doesn't do you any good.
yeah. So this is a part of the contract. A lot of people don't read, they overlook it. But if the lender won't give the buyer this written notice, then the buyer shall notify the seller or the listing broker on or before the loan contingency deadline date by providing a notarized affidavit that the buyer has complied with all the terms of the paragraph, and despite the request, the buyer was unable to obtain such written notice from the lender. So one thing I want you to be aware of, who do you have in your back pocket that's a notary? Let's pretend this is Friday after 5 o'clock when all this comes down and you realize that lender's not sending me a commitment. How are you
My
gonna
wife.
get that?
title company.
There you go. Okay, so Mona's wife is a notary. So keep that in mind. That won't help the Washington agents, but
We'll find one.
okay. But you can't just send over a note. It has to be notarized. So if the agent's smart, they'll say, well, too bad you didn't. So the other thing you could do is send the letter and then also send a mutual release and send an amendment that says giving you more time for the financing contingency. So you have some options, but you make sure that you have that letter. That's very important.
Okay,
That's
can
the
I,
problem with working with out-of-state lenders. I'm sorry. I mean, if they're here in St. Louis, I'm gonna be on the phone, or I'll get in my car and drive over there and knock on the door to try to get something, right? But
Right.
when you got people in California, that's not gonna work. And
Can I-
guess what? This lender now is ghosting all of us.
oh, I bet. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah,
Okay, and this has happened, and I'm sure to most of us. The day of, the loan commitment, the bank calls and says, we haven't gotten it out of underwriting. We just need a few more days, and you ask for an extension. And you send it to the other agent. You have the buyer. And the agent, I mean, by you sending that, is that automatically saying I don't have it? Because what happens if the seller says, I'm not extending it?
no, because then, you know what? A really smart agent would sit on it and wait till tomorrow morning or 12:01 or 12:02 a.m. and send you an email and say, looking forward to closing next week.
Yeah, but if you prove that you sent it to her, and I
Doesn't
mean,
matter. Mm-mm.
so I'm saying, if you send it on the date of
No.
loan commitment, what do you have to get to make sure you're okay? Other
That
than
affidavit that I just talked about.
the affidavit asking for an extension?
And a mutual
No, saying
release
they can't,
and
right, saying you can't get it. Those
Oh.
words that I put on there are right out of the contract. And I would type it up just like that, right out of the contract, and have your buyer sign it and have Mona's wife notarize it and send it over.
Just because they send it to you doesn't mean it's a guarantee then.
Right,
That-
and I had an
that
agent
finance-
do that, thinking that because they
Yeah.
sent the amendment, they were okay. Mona?
I
now,
have that all the
keep
time.
in mind, if this is somebody you do business with on a regular basis, you are burning one hell of a bridge. If you don't kind of try to cooperate with them. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
do, as a norm, try to cooperate with that, but you never know what a seller is going to do, in my opinion. So if you are protecting your buyer, you send a mutual release, you send the affidavit, and you send the extension saying, hey, just to CYA my buyer, we've sent the mutual release in this affidavit along with it. What we want is a few more days. But just to CYA my client, we've sent the mutual release along with the affidavit saying we haven't been able to obtain it. But what we want to do is move forward.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I was gonna say, wow,
Yep.
okay.
And if I've got the seller and I have to do my due diligence, right, with the seller, they're gonna be like, wait, I just can feel it. Like, wait a minute, what, all of a sudden, when I'm packing up my house, I'm 3 or 4 days from moving and now you're springing this on me. Okay, so maybe you ask for what Mona said earlier was some non-refundable earnest money. Get them more engaged in the transaction. Find out how serious they are. I mean, if you're buying a house, you should have a couple grand extra, right, in your checking or something. Get them something.
Well, right, you got to bring a check to closing anyway, so you give them a
Right.
few extra for that.
Right. It's not that it wouldn't be applied towards the sale. It's that if it doesn't close, your seller gets to keep it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. So we kind of started on this a little bit this morning. What program are you using to keep organized with contingency deadlines and inspections, etc.? Do you personally hold yourself accountable, responsible for those dates? Or do you include your buyer, your client, your buyer, your seller in on those dates?
I do.
I hold myself responsible, but I also put the buyer and the seller dates in their calendars as well.
Okay, how do you do that, Mona?
Well, if they're coming into the office, I'm writing it in their folder. If they're
Okay.
not coming into the office and they've signed via DocuSign, they get an email with those important dates.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Randy?
I do both. I keep it myself, but I also tell the buyer their responsibilities to keep on top of these contingency dates. So to me, it's a team. It's not just
Right.
me, it's him.
Yeah. So I think one of the deadlines that I find important and we may not be aware of is the municipal inspection. And if they need to call immediately and get that appointment. So if they miss that, let's just say it's day 16, municipal comes out and flags items. Guess what? According to the contract, now what? We said 15
Seller has
and
to
now
take
we're
care
on
of
day
it.
You have to fix it.
everything that's
Yep.
on there. Where if you're within that 15-day period, it's negotiable, right? So how do you make sure that they schedule that, or do you schedule municipal inspections for them?
It depends on the person.
Try to do it before.
Yeah, that's what I've been doing too. I'm trying to get them to do it ahead of time so that we're proactive with it and, you know, because they'll give you a lot of time frame to get everything done and do a re-inspection with St. Louis County, so.
Yeah, I think it's super smart to get it done ahead of time, because then you can say in your marketing, hey, municipal has already been done. So that takes that concern away about, oh, maybe they'll want to renegotiate some of those repairs as well.
Okay, quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, I have a house that's being sold in an estate. The executor is a pretty high-powered attorney. And ICE had suggested going ahead and getting this. Well, we had an offer on it. It didn't work out, but they were asking for the inspection, but not the work, because we said we're selling as is. Now, I wanted to schedule this inspection, but if I find out something, you know, because he knows nothing about the property, and the seller's disclosure pretty much says, I'm an executor, this is what it is, get your inspections. So once I get that city inspection, all that has to be disclosed. And that's what I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Yes,
I mean,
ma'am.
But I'm just saying is, I want him to say, yes, you do that, because I'm not going to just do it, even though he said, go ahead and order it. But that was for that particular contract. Now we don't have or an offer. So
Doesn't
now,
matter. Once you have knowledge, you
Oh, yeah,
as
I
the
get that,
agent
yeah.
are just as much responsible as that owner.
absolutely.
We're going to
but-
talk
but I-
about, actually, we're going to talk about that here in just a
Oh,
second.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up. It's a great topic.
One thing.
Okay, so we'll move on to that, actually. So actually, it's the next slide, but you represent the buyer. They want to purchase a single family residence with the intent to rent. So you got the buyer and they've said, hey, I want to buy a house and put renters in there. What rider would you use to help protect your buyer so that they can rent it out?
Make sure the zoning's right. Or the subdivision allows it or whatever.
Right, the review of indentures.
That's
Yeah.
right. So that, because I think it's Woodson Terrace, somebody may know better, but I think it's Woodson Terrace that only allows maybe 2 rentals on a street. All right, so they're trying to stop people from coming in and just renting out the whole area. So that indenture, that review of subdivision indentures, that will help, that gives them 10 days to research and find out if that's possible. And then within that 10 days, if they discover something or they change their mind, they can walk. Now, some sellers won't accept that rider because that's 10 days is a long time to be able to figure it out. But again, the lender has to approve it too. If they're not paying cash and they're getting financing, the lender may not allow something like that. But if they're wanting to start, they want to be an investor. This, I'm talking about a single family residence. There are restrictions out there in some municipalities.
Hey, Lynn. One of the things that some of the subdivisions, and actually ours is trying to do this now, is they're trying to change our indentures too, so that somebody has to own the property for a certain period of time before they can rent it. All these companies coming in from out of town.
Yep.
And looking to purchase just for the purpose of rental. So
Right.
that's the other thing too, just to be careful.
Alexi, can you click the next slide, please? So the National Association of Realtors, I've been on there looking at their blogs. This that is coming up. The National Missouri Association of Realtors, excuse me. They are, bless you. There's a lot of people, just like your subdivision, they're saying, hey, wait a minute, we don't want all these people renting houses. We had that with Airbnb when that first came out, and a lot of people got a cease and desist letter on their door because municipalities don't like it. And truthfully, I wouldn't like it myself, having that kind of, it's transient, right? It's constantly people moving in and out, in and out. You don't know who they are, where they've been, that sort of thing. So that's why it's best to be proactive if you can. Check it out. So what do you think is the #1 claim against real estate agents?
I'm gonna guess they didn't represent them.
We're fantastic.
Well, it actually
Disclosure.
is something that Liz just talked about.
Disclosure.
Yep. And so this is I didn't come up with these numbers. So they claim that 60% of the sellers admit to not disclosing a known problem with their property. Yeah. So, and that was a part that really concerned us last year, was all these people waiving building inspections, paying cash, paying over, all of that. This was constant concern of ours that people now are going, wait a minute, things are halting, market's changing, and now we've got something wrong in the basement or the roof's leaking and all those kinds of things. So once you know, you are as equally responsible for disclosure if you know.
If you know, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, but if the seller doesn't tell you, what are you supposed to do?
Well, if they don't tell you, you don't know.
That's right. But I'm sure that buyers want to sue anyway. Even
Right.
if
So
you didn't know.
Lexi, click the next slide. So let's talk about that, Liz. That's what if you have a listing and the sellers told you, hey, we had problems with the basement, we got it fixed, I've drywalled it, there hasn't been any problems. And you say, well, you need to disclose that because that's a question. You have to disclose it. And they say, no, I'm not disclosing that. I fixed it. What do?
I'm walking.
You don't take the listing.
Yeah.
That's right. And I know that's a hard one. That's really hard to say thanks, but no thanks. But we actually have a lawsuit right now going on And the sellers claimed that the basement was finished when they bought it. And they went to the new buyers, when they moved in, they started tearing down the walls because they wanted to refigure the basement. And there's all kinds of repair work that was done. And so now they're suing.
But was it finished when they bought it?
Well, we
First
were
person.
told that it was, but it's still, we still got sued. Everybody got sued.
See, that makes no sense. How can the seller be responsible for something that was there before when he bought it? I mean, he could only report if there's a problem while he owned it.
Right, and it doesn't leak. It's about the disclosure of not telling them that it had a problem and it was fixed. So that's something to think about. Even though it's been, the roof leaked and you fixed it, you still have to what? Disclose it.
But what if it was not under your ownership?
If you knew it was fixed, you still disclose it.
You have to disclose what happened when you bought it, what was told to you.
Anytime you've been made aware of it.
I'll be darned. Okay. I mean, I get it, but it's hearsay.
I know, I get it. Yeah. And it's hard. It's very difficult to turn a listing down, especially a listing when you know, you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to sell right away and it's priced right and all these things, but they don't want to disclose a problem.
Oh, no, I'd have to run.
So Lynn, I have a listing coming, and the seller said, the previous owner said, from the previous owner, there were two posts put in the basement, and it looks to be proper to support the fireplace. And you can see they're there.
Mhm.
Do we put that in? It's below the fireplace. There's two posts. They look to be a footing put in. We don't know that a footing was put in. We don't know anything other than these two posts were put in. I mean, is that something that you disclose?
But does it look like it's decorative posts to make it look
heck no,
pretty?
it's a proper post
Yeah.
that.
Well, I would say that's it's out in the open, you can see it, but that doesn't excuse the basement that has that, what's that stuff called with the black tape all over it? It scares you down when you walk in, you're like, I don't want that house. But I think it's okay, but I wouldn't sell that house without an inspection. That's what I would say. That would be my answer.
Well,
Put it on the inspector. What's that?
I pointed it out and I said, because I pre-showed it and I said, hey, the seller said, and he goes, oh yeah, that doesn't bother me. And that's kind of what I did. I said, hey, the seller said the previous owner said that the rehabber put this in, blah, blah, blah.
To help support.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I guess if you think about it, what would it hurt to just say previous owners said poster added? And then that way
It doesn't hurt anything.
it
No.
doesn't hurt anything. They can see it.
Doesn't hurt. It's one line, right on seller's disclosure, one and done.
Right, and
one
if
and
that's
done,
if that's all the previous seller told you, I mean, if they didn't say why it was put in, you can't make something up, so.
I
Well,
guess
it's
it's
structural
fireplace.
support.
Yeah. The
I'm
fireplace.
gonna say this, if in doubt, write it out. If in doubt,
That's a good
write
date,
it
yeah.
out.
All right.
Yeah.
See, I was along the line of Liz with that's kind of hearsay. We don't really know. That was,
Well, you don't.
I don't know, but
I don't either.
I
And she's-
think, Lynn, what you said is that you do put it on the inspector. Don't put it on yourself because you don't know.
I don't know. Yeah,
Yeah, but there
I wouldn't
again,
sell
then
that
you know
house
they don't have
without
an
the
inspection.
buyer having an inspection.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I could see.
I just write it in there, have them write it in. Hey, we were told that the two posts in the basement were put in by the fireplace as extra support for the fireplace.
all right.
We were told. Okay, number 11, you represent the buyer and you write on an offer with a special sale inspection writer. The property is listed in the MLS as all electric. On line 7, it reads, seller will arrange at seller's expense for the following utilities to be turned on during the inspection period, as defined below. And there's lines. So now you wrote in water and electric, but on the day that you're doing the inspection, you discover there's gas and the gas is turned off. Now what? So the listing agent put in the MLS that it's all electric. Does the listing agent have any fault in this? Because they told you it's all electric.
You didn't
I
look,
would think so,
you didn't
Right.
look.
Right.
but it says in the listing that it's not guaranteed and you should,
But here's the thing, guys. MLS, what does it say on the sheet when you print it out?
That's what
This-
Liz just
this
said.
information is not, yeah.
Mhm. I would put all utilities. I wouldn't be so, write it all.
That's a
You-
good,
if you
right,
write-
all utilities.
All utilities turned
Yeah.
on. So don't rely, I guess what I'm trying to say here is don't rely on what's in the MLS because it's not always accurate. And the agent should have looked and said, oh, that looks like that's a gas furnace, or maybe they were in a hurry, maybe it was cold out, I don't know, but
Can I ask a question since we're talking about MLS?
yeah.
This is for everybody that's on here. When you get an offer, you have the seller, you get an offer from the buyer, and they've written in there, like maybe on the first page where it has the inclusions, and it says all appliances as noted in MLS, or somewhere else under special agreements or something, it'll reference MLS. What do you do with that? Do you leave that alone? Do you counter back? I mean, if you're going to accept, you accept, and are you going to counter back, and are you going to do an amendment and take that out, or do you just ignore it?
Are you saying it's not valid?
No, I'm not saying it's not valid, but the contract states that it says this contract, not the MLS or the seller's disclosure, contains what's in this contract. So if you reference MLS, does
Correct.
that matter to you?
I agree with you, Kathy. It's ambiguous when they do stupid shit like that.
The best one is as viewed on date such and such. That
Yeah.
there's an
How the
agent.
hell do you know what was viewed?
He does that so much, it drives me crazy because it's like.
I'm gonna
washer-
say this, don't do it.
Hell no, I
If
never.
there's a refrigerator and a stove and a this and a that you want, you list it.
You
You
darn
can
right.
list it and say at no value if you need to do that because you're concerned the
Mhm.
lender won't approve it. But you need to be very specific. And if you're during the inspection, let's just say there's a nice Sub-Zero refrigerator. I might say to the inspector, hey, you mind taking a picture of that refrigerator with the little, that little tag, that metal tags in there with the numbers on it, just to confirm, because I had somebody take the shitty refrigerator from the basement, pull it out and put it in the kitchen and take the kitchen out. So,
I've had that happen more than once. And so the first time that I ever wrote a contract for Brian, and I put on there, it had the make, I didn't have the tag number, but I had the make, and you're right, there was a kitchen, there was a refrigerator upstairs, and there was one in the basement. And the one in the basement was an old thing. The one upstairs was a 3-door. It had the French doors and the freezer below. So I always write, if this one, I put stainless, 3-door, freezer below, refrigerator in kitchen, or Kenmore, Whirlpool, whatever it was, a refrigerator.
Yeah,
Because I've had that happen more than once, that they switched the refrigerators or they just took it.
yeah. That is,
Yeah.
you have to be specific because they will do that.
I had one I just had to counter because they actually had, they put in a gas or an electric stove instead of gas, which is what it is. And I was afraid that if I didn't counter it back to what it was, they were going to try to get us to switch it out. To
very
something.
smart. Yeah.
So we did counter.
Yeah,
it.
you would have been paying for an electrician to
Exactly.
come in and redo that. There'll be
Right.
some bucks. Yeah.
True.
Okay, next one. I want to, let's see, what do we have? So are you aware of this? It's in the Forms or Us. It's called an inspection contingency brochure, and the form number's 2060. I think it's a great thing to hand to your clients. It talks about why you need inspections, what the contingency process, it gives a little calendar and how you count the days. What's included in the inspection report, why you need these building inspections. So it's 2 pages. It's completed by the board, so it's all legal. I would suggest you do that you give them a copy. Does everybody know about that?
No,
No,
So write down form number 2060. So this is kind of just a little funny reminder here for all of us. I got a contract today. What's wrong with this?
Wrong year.
That's right. So I'm asking you to be careful with your listing contracts, amendments.
Especially this time of year.
It's so easy
Yeah.
to write 2022 on there. And then you're gonna have to go back and make amendments, and it's kind of embarrassing, right? That, I made a mistake. But in truth, it's not valid because it's already expired. So just ask you to watch your dates.
You know, I was gonna tell you that I was in an unusual situation this week. How many people have dealt with adverse possession? Yeah, well, Kathy, I mean, so here was my situation. We lived in a house from 97 to 2012. Sold it, my house, to actually somebody that I knew. And so they've lived in it from 2013 to 10 years. So in the meantime, a guy that actually lived down the street bought the house next to them. Now, in the meantime, when we came in 97, we did a lot of stuff to the house, did a lot of landscaping and put up new fences and everything. So when all that happened, unbeknownst to me and anybody else, you know, we had a survey done and everything else when you buy the house. So all these years went by, and this guy moves in. He happens to be crazy, and he moves in 2014. In 2018, he starts taking out landscaping that's around the fence, and then he trims back these trees to where he kills them that are on the old property line. And then he starts hanging lights on the wrought iron fence. That's the people's wrought iron fence. So as it's happened for the last 20 some odd years, the landscapers and lawn people have taken care of that area that's on his side yard for 20 some odd years. Well, he comes out and tells them he's going to invoke the castle doctrine and shoot them if they don't leave his property. So this starts an issue with Ken, who's the guy that bought my house. He goes over, knocks on his door and says, "Hey, you're threatening, you know, my landscape people. You know, this is terrible." And he says, "And I'm going to invoke the castle doctrine on you. If you don't leave my property right now, I'm going to shoot you." Then he sends a letter to everybody in the neighborhood that he will also shoot them. So this thing has gone on for 4 years, since 2018. It took 4 years because of the continuances. This crazy guy's had two attorneys. Finally, though, we had to come in as witnesses because of when we put the fence in back in 97. But it was interesting because once the evidence was presented, there was no argument. There was no permission that was ever asked to maintain. We're talking about an area that was like this big, we had encroached on that property, unbeknownst to us. It just happened. So he was ruled against. This goes into the recorder of deeds, and there's an easement created on top of that. So he even lost more property, and he had to pay the court fees. So if you ever get into a situation like that, if you have, it's 10 years or more. And if you can prove that you've maintained that property for 10 years or more, it's worth the effort, especially if you're getting harassed by, or if your people are getting harassed by the
Great.
person. Yeah, he's crazy. The other thing that I was gonna tell you that's interesting about this guy, his wife died. This is the other part, this is like the Dateline piece. That his wife had a big practice, she was a doctor, and she died of an overdose. She lost her gynecologist practice through a medical malpractice lawsuit that wiped out the practice. She dies at 48 years old as an overdose. He then cashes in her life insurance policy and buys this house. So it's an open investigation, it has been, that he possibly killed his wife. So
Oh,
you don't want crazy
Yeah.
neighbors around, I guess is the moral of the story.
Did he claim adverse possession? Is that what he was trying? Are you?
No, what happened was, he was just saying it was his property, Liz. And he said, and he was telling them that they were violating or trespassing
But it
on his
really was his
property.
property.
And
really
so
was.
it really was and wasn't, because of the amount of time that had been maintained.
Brent
So,
stole it.
what was that?
I said Brent stole it.
Yeah, I stole it. I put my fence on his land. I just didn't know it.
Where is this property at?
It's in Clayton.
In Clayton,
know,
oh, cray
I'll
people
give that
in
a-
Clayton.
Yeah, crazy people in Clayton, yeah.
Well, the surveyor needed to be talked to.
Yeah, well, actually, the crazy thing about it, Liz, is there were two surveys. There was a survey when we purchased the property, but there was another survey by the landscaper. He just surveyed it incorrectly. So there were two survey companies
Oh.
involved in the transaction.
Show us that.
So
paper.
just, anyway, the only reason I brought it up is I know it comes up from time to time. Adverse possession comes up, in property real estate. I certainly never dealt with it in my lifetime, but you
We
can
see
win.
it more out here than you
Yeah.
guys, because of
Yeah,
mine
the
was a little less, mine was a little less contentious than yours.
we don't have it. But I know there's something that has to be openly and hostile. So
Openly
I
and
assume,
notoriously.
yes, and notorious, yeah.
Well,
So
I mean, Liz, you would have situations possibly where somebody's sharing a driveway or, all those type of things where,
Like
Yeah.
a fence up.
or fence, yeah.
They have we have more
That
like
was-
land problems.
Yeah, that was ours. Ours was in our pasture. When we bought the farm, the fence was already up. So, we didn't know. And then the people that adjoined our property went to sell their property. And when they had the survey done, they found out that our fence was on their property. And it was a strip about, like you said, Brent, it
Yeah.
wasn't a very big strip. But we were good neighbors, so they just deeded that part over to us, which was
That's
nice.
the best way to handle it, yeah.
That's good neighbors, that's right.
Yeah, that's good neighbors, yeah. Completely opposite of what I just discussed.
Yeah.
Completely.
Well, see, it does work both ways, so.
Yeah,
All
Crazy.
right, guys, thank you for being here. Have a nice weekend. Happy New Year.